My dear friends, there is a profound difference between being alone and being lonely. Solitude, when embraced with an open heart, can become a sanctuary, a place where we discover the depths of who we are without the noise of the world. Too often, society tells us that to be alone is to be lacking, that if we find ourselves without a partner, we must rush to fill the emptiness. But what if solitude isn't a void to be filled, but a canvas to be painted with our passions, dreams, and self-discovery? Learning to sit comfortably in our own company is one of the bravest acts we can undertake. It's an act of defiance against the belief that our worth is tied to others' acceptance or presence. In solitude, we find the space to listen to the quiet whispers of our own hearts, to the dreams we've buried under obligations, and to the truths we've been too afraid to face. It's in these quiet moments that clarity blooms. When we strip away the distractions and the need to please, we see ourselves more clearly. We start to understand what makes us come alive, what wounds still need healing, and what paths we yearn to walk. Solitude becomes a mirror, reflecting back not just our flaws, but also our strength, resilience, and the beauty of our own minds. The fear of loneliness often keeps us from embracing this space, yet it is within this space that true self-awareness and growth begin. There's a common misconception that solitude is synonymous with isolation. But beloved, solitude is a choice while isolation is a prison. Choosing solitude is an act of self-love. It's creating boundaries to protect our peace and making time to invest in our own hearts. In solitude, we learn to hold space for ourselves, to grieve, to heal, to dream without judgment. We learn to fill our own cups. So when we do return to the world, we do so whole rather than half empty. It's about finding contentment in who we are without needing the validation of others. This doesn't mean we don't need connection. Of course we do. But it means that our self-worth isn't dependent on it. Solitude also grants us the freedom to grow without compromise. In the quiet, we find the courage to try new things, to fail without an audience, and to pursue passions that others might not understand. It's where we rediscover old hobbies or find new ones, where we can spend hours getting lost in books, art, nature, or whatever makes our spirits soar. Without the pressure to fit into others' expectations, we can expand, evolve, and become who we were always meant to be. Solitude is a garden where self-acceptance takes root and flourishes. But embracing solitude requires a shift in mindset. It asks us to replace the fear of being alone with curiosity about ourselves. Instead of seeing a quiet weekend as something to dread, what if we viewed it as an opportunity to reconnect with ourselves, to write, to reflect, to sit in silence without rushing to fill it with noise? It's about learning to enjoy our own company, to treat ourselves with the kindness and patience we often reserve for others. When we do this, loneliness loses its power. We begin to see solitude as a gift, not a punishment. Beloved, the power of being alone without feeling lonely lies in this. The more comfortable we become in our own presence, the less we will tolerate relationships that require us to abandon ourselves. When we learn to embrace solitude, we are no longer afraid of being left alone because we have already made peace with ourselves. And that, beloved, is the true power of solitude. The freedom to live fully and authentically, knowing that we are enough just as we are. Strength has long been defined by society in narrow terms, terms that often fail to capture the quiet resilience of women who walk alone. Too often, strength is depicted as toughness, as a refusal to break or bend. But true strength is much deeper. It's the willingness to embrace vulnerability, to show up authentically, and to live boldly even when the world tells us we shouldn't. For single women, this strength is often overlooked or misunderstood. Society is quick to paint them as lonely or lacking, as if a woman's worth is only validated by a partner's presence. But what if the act of standing alone is one of the bravest things a woman can do? What if strength is found not in the avoidance of solitude, but in the ability to thrive within it? From a young age, women are taught to aspire to partnership, to see marriage as the ultimate symbol of success and stability. The narratives are clear. A woman with a ring is settled. A woman without is somehow adrift. This limited vision dismisses the rich, complex lives that single women lead, the careers they build, the passions they pursue, the communities they nurture. It overlooks the courage it takes to face life's storms without a hand to hold, to make decisions without a sounding board, and to find joy without waiting for permission. Strength, beloved, is found in rewriting these narratives. It's in choosing to see singleness not as a stopgap, but as a valid and fulfilling path in its own right. Redefining strength also means challenging the notion that independence is a burden rather than a gift. The world often frames self-sufficient women as intimidating, as if the ability to stand alone is a flaw rather than a form of freedom. But independence is not about rejecting connection. It's about refusing to settle for connections that require self-betrayal. It's about knowing your worth so deeply that you would rather be alone than be with someone who diminishes it. Strength is saying no to relationships that do not honor your spirit, even when the world insists that any relationship is better than none. It's about choosing authenticity over acceptance, integrity over approval. And there is also a profound strength in the way single women build their own support systems, networks of friends, family, and community that uplift and sustain them. Without the traditional framework of partnership to lean on, single women learn to weave their own safety nets. They become their own advocates, learning to navigate finances, careers, and life's uncertainties with courage and competence. This kind of strength is often unseen and unsung, but it is no less powerful. It's in the way single mothers raise children with fierce love and limited resources, in the way single women pursue education and passions without waiting for permission, and in the way they show up for others even when they themselves are weary. Challenging society's views on single women also requires us to question the idea that a woman's life is somehow incomplete until she finds a partner. This mindset not only diminishes the lives of single women, but also places an unfair burden on those in relationships to find all their fulfillment in one person. By embracing the wholeness of single women, we expand what is possible for all women. We create space for lives defined by purpose, passion, and self-discovery, rather than by relationship status. When we see single women not as waiting to be chosen, but as choosing themselves, we shift the narrative from lack to abundance, from incompleteness to fullness. Beloved, the true test of strength is not in how well we fit into society's boxes, but in how boldly we step outside them. Single women who walk alone without apology are redefining strength every day by living lives that are rich with meaning, by loving themselves fiercely, and by refusing to let society's limited vision define them. They remind us that strength is not about never being afraid, but about moving forward in spite of that fear. It's about daring to believe that you are enough, just as you are, and living in a way that reflects that truth. So let us celebrate the strength of women who walk alone. Let us honor their courage to live authentically, their resilience to rise again and again, and their faith in their own worth. For in doing so, we redefine what it means to be strong, not just for single women, but for us all. There is a kind of power that comes from owning your story. A power that doesn't come from perfection or the absence of pain, but from the willingness to embrace every messy, beautiful, and broken part of it. Too often we live in fear of our own stories. We tuck away the chapters that hold shame, the pages stained with mistakes, and the lines where our hearts cracked open. We silence the parts of us that hurt, afraid that if the world sees our scars, it will judge us unworthy. But beloved, true courage is found in the act of saying, "This is me, all of me, without apology or pretense." Owning your story is not about ignoring the pain. It's about refusing to let it have the last word. Vulnerability is the gateway to courage, yet we're taught to see it as a weakness, as something to hide or overcome. We're told to be strong, to keep it together, to never let them see us break. But courage is not about armoring up. It's about tearing down the walls that keep us from being seen. When we own our stories, we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, not because it's easy, but because it's real. Vulnerability is admitting that we don't have it all figured out, that we hurt, that we long, that we are still healing. It's choosing to share our stories not just when they are wrapped in a bow, but when they are raw and unfinished. In this sharing, we find freedom. We discover that our struggles are not unique, that others have walked similar paths, and that in our brokenness, we are never truly alone. Owning your story also means letting go of the need to control how others see you. When we hide parts of ourselves, we're not just protecting our hearts, we're imprisoning them. We become actors in our own lives, curating an image that is polished but false, safe but suffocating. To own your story is to reclaim your authenticity, to stop editing your life for the comfort of others. It's deciding that you would rather be disliked for who you are than loved for who you're not. This kind of courage does not come without a cost. Some will turn away, some will misunderstand. But the reward is a life lived fully, freely, and without regret. There is a profound strength in saying, "This is my story, and I will not be ashamed of it." For when we own our stories, we also own our power, the power to heal, to grow, and to transform. Our past may have shaped us, but it does not define us unless we let it. By embracing our stories, we turn pain into purpose, failure into fuel, and scars into symbols of survival. We begin to see our struggles as part of the mosaic of who we are, each piece necessary and valuable. The chapters that once caused us to hide become the very ones that connect us to others. For it is not our victories that build bridges, but our vulnerabilities, the shared truth that we are all still becoming. But owning your story is not a one-time act. It is a daily choice. It's choosing to forgive yourself for the mistakes you made when you didn't know better, to love the parts of you that are still healing, and to believe that even your unfinished chapters hold worth. It's speaking kindly to yourself on the days when shame tries to write the ending and choosing to show up anyway. When you own your story, you refuse to be a victim of it. You take the pen back, you write with intention, and you live with the knowledge that no matter what the past holds, you have the power to shape what comes next. Beloved, there is a courage that comes from being fully seen and fully known, not in spite of your story, but because of it. When you embrace every chapter, you give others permission to do the same. You become a lighthouse for those who are still hiding in the shadows, proof that it is possible to live authentically and be loved as you are. So tell your story boldly. Tell it without shame, without apology, and without fear. For in owning your story, you own your power. And that, beloved, is where true courage begins. There is a kind of freedom that can only be found when we dare to live beyond the expectations others have placed upon us. From the moment we take our first breaths, the world begins to write its story for us, telling us who to be, how to act, and what paths to follow. For women especially, these expectations can feel like walls closing in. We are told that fulfillment looks like a ring on our finger, a family to care for, and a life lived quietly within the lines. But beloved, what if true fulfillment comes from breaking those lines and choosing for ourselves? What if the greatest act of courage is to stop living for others' approval and start living for our own hearts? The freedom to choose is not just about making decisions. It's about reclaiming your power to define what happiness, success, and purpose mean to you. Too often we live on autopilot, following paths that were never truly ours. Careers chosen to make others proud, relationships pursued to feel accepted, dreams silenced because they seem too risky. But there comes a time when the weight of living for others becomes too heavy to carry. Choosing your own path means risking disapproval, facing uncertainty, and sometimes walking alone. Yet it also means waking up each day knowing that the life you are living is truly yours. It's about looking in the mirror and recognizing the woman staring back, not as a stranger shaped by others' expectations, but as the author of her own story. Building a life beyond expectations also means embracing the unknown with faith rather than fear. Society loves a roadmap: graduate, get married, have kids, retire. But the most beautiful lives are often the ones that refuse to follow the script. It takes courage to say no to the expected in pursuit of what sets your soul on fire. It means leaving relationships that are comfortable but not fulfilling, walking away from jobs that pay the bills but drain your spirit, and daring to dream dreams that others might not understand. It's the freedom to start over at any age, to reinvent yourself without apology, and to chase passions that make your heart race. The unknown may be daunting, but it is also where possibility lives, where we discover parts of ourselves that would have remained hidden had we stayed on paths that others laid out for us. Choosing a life beyond expectations also requires us to redefine success. The world has narrow definitions: titles, wealth, a picture-perfect family. But true success is a life lived authentically, a life that reflects who you truly are rather than who you are supposed to be. It's in the courage to pursue purpose over popularity, passion over paycheck, and meaning over medals. When we stop measuring our worth by others' standards, we find the freedom to build a life that aligns with our deepest values. This kind of success may not come with applause or admiration, but it brings a peace that cannot be bought, a peace that comes from knowing that you are living true to yourself. The freedom to choose is also about shedding guilt, the guilt of disappointing others, of taking paths less traveled, of living a life that looks different from what is expected. Women especially are taught to please, to sacrifice, to make themselves small for the comfort of others. But beloved, shrinking yourself to fit into others' expectations is not kindness, it is self-abandonment. To live freely is to release this guilt and to embrace the truth that your life is yours to live. It's about setting boundaries that protect your peace, saying no without justification, and loving yourself enough to prioritize your own happiness. This kind of freedom requires us to trust ourselves deeply, to believe that our desires are valid, our intuition is wise, and our dreams are worthy. Beloved, the freedom to choose is a gift and a responsibility. It means we cannot blame others for the paths we take or the lives we build. It means owning our choices fully, the missteps, the triumphs, the risks that didn't pay off, and the ones that did. But it also means that we hold the pen to our own stories, that each day is an opportunity to choose again, to course correct, to step boldly in the direction of the life we truly want. This freedom may come at a cost of comfort, of certainty, of approval, but it is the only way to build a life that feels true, that feels right, that feels like home. So let us embrace the freedom to choose. Not just once, but every day. Let us choose courage over conformity, authenticity over acceptance, and a life that reflects our hearts rather than the expectations of others. For in this choosing, beloved, we find not just freedom, but the fullness of life itself. There is a kind of freedom that comes from loving yourself without the need for validation, from knowing deep in your bones that you are enough just as you are. Too often, our self-worth is chained to the opinions of others, to the approval we seek, to the likes and comments that light up our screens but leave our hearts empty. We live in a world that tells us we must prove our worth through our appearance, our accomplishments, our ability to fit into molds never made for us. But beloved, true self-worth is unchained. It is not measured by what others see in us, but by what we see in ourselves. It is the quiet confidence that comes from embracing every part of who we are, the beautiful and the broken, the powerful and the imperfect. To love yourself without validation requires unlearning years of conditioning that taught us our worth must be earned. From a young age, we are praised for our grades, our looks, our ability to make others comfortable. We grow up believing that love must be conditional, that we must hustle for our worthiness by achieving more, pleasing more, sacrificing more. But beloved, your worth was never meant to be a negotiation. It was never meant to be bartered or earned. To love yourself freely is to reject the lie that you must do more, be more, or change who you are to deserve love. It's about embracing your worth as inherent and unshakable, no title, relationship, or external approval required. It's about standing firm in the truth that you are enough simply because you exist. Loving yourself without validation also means letting go of the need to be liked by everyone. People pleasing is a chain that binds us to a life of smallness, a life spent editing ourselves to fit others' expectations. We smile when we want to cry, say yes when we mean no, and diminish our light so others won't feel uncomfortable. But beloved, you were never meant to live a life that small. To unchain your self-worth is to embrace the reality that not everyone will understand or approve of you, and that's okay. It's about choosing authenticity over acceptance, even when it's lonely. When you stop living for applause, you start living for what truly matters. Your values, your joy, your truth. There is also a profound courage in choosing to validate yourself, in looking in the mirror and speaking life over your own reflection. Society teaches us to wait for others to tell us we're beautiful, smart, capable, worthy. But when was the last time you spoke those words to yourself without waiting for someone else to say them first? To love yourself without validation is to become your own biggest advocate. It's celebrating your own wins, comforting yourself in your losses, and choosing to believe in your own potential even when no one else does. This kind of love is not arrogance, it's survival. It's building a home within yourself so that when the storms come, and they will, you have a place to rest that no one can take away. Unchaining your self-worth also means redefining success on your own terms. The world will tell you that success looks like a certain salary, a certain relationship status, a certain body type. But beloved, true success is a life lived in alignment with who you truly are. It's the peace that comes from knowing you are walking in your purpose, regardless of whether the world sees or applauds it. It's the quiet victories, choosing rest without guilt, saying no without apology, loving without fear. When you define success for yourself, you free yourself from the exhausting chase for validation. You begin to build a life that feels right rather than one that just looks right. Beloved, to love yourself without validation is the ultimate act of defiance in a world that profits from your self-doubt. It's refusing to let your worth rise and fall on others' opinions or your ability to meet impossible standards. It's living unchained, not from a place of bitterness or pride, but from a place of deep, unshakable knowing that you are worthy of love and belonging just as you are. This kind of self-love is not a destination, but a daily practice, a choice to speak kindly to yourself, to forgive yourself, to show up for yourself with the same compassion you so freely give to others. So let us unchain our self-worth. Let us love ourselves boldly, fiercely, and without apology. Let us refuse to let our value be defined by anything outside of us. For when we learn to love ourselves without validation, beloved, we discover a freedom that cannot be taken away. A freedom to live fully, love deeply, and walk in the truth of who we are.